It's a blessing and a curse being Chris Hani's daughter because it comes with so many amazing things, but the biggest is that I was his daughter. My mom would go to the car, make us stand a few hundred meters away, open the bonnet, look for bombs. I had to suppress my grief because of optics. They told me that the country's watching and I shouldn't cry.
Wow.
And that's the message that I carried on.
Childhood trauma, we know more and more now, the impact it has on our lives. And a lot of it goes undetected and we just go through life. We turn to stuff to dull the pain. You know? Some of us turn to things that are socially acceptable, like overworking and over-gymming or whatever. But there's drugs and there's sex and there's rock and roll and all these different...
Absolutely. I mean, my sister wrote a letter about how my addiction impacts our family.
Sure.
That was so difficult to hear. And I'll never forget, as soon as I heard it, I went straight to the nurse's office. I said, I have a headache.
If you've been through addiction, you know it, you understand it, and you've overcome something massive. You've overcome something that most people don't understand, because addiction is powerful.
I used to compare myself with my counterparts. Oh, they're this, they're not addicts. But I realized that everything that has happened to me has been for me to be sitting right here and having this conversation with you. So I think the final words is that, we need to lean into our pain, and we need to lean into our trauma, and we need to share it.
Hi there, Craig Wilkinson. This is the podcast Force for Good, and I am incredibly excited today. I'm interviewing a very special human being who has an incredible story, Lindiwe Hani. Welcome, and thank you for gracing us with your very beautiful presence.
Craig, you say that to all the ladies.
No, I don't.
But thanks. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah. I want to jump straight in. I mean, this podcast is all about being a force for good. In other words, being a human being that has the maximum impact for good. But what's also beautiful is we're very authentic, and all of us have stories. I run a lot of programs with men in corporates, and I get them to tell their story. And I say, guys, this is a sacred space, because when we need to take our shoes off, because when a man or a woman shares their story, they're sharing stuff that's often unknown, unseen, undealt with. You know, it's a powerful. And you in particular have a phenomenal story with highs and lows, very high highs, very low lows, but a phenomenal victory for me, because you've come out the amazing human being that you are.
Oh,
and no, I mean that with all my heart. You know.
No, it's very kind.
Yeah.
It's very kind of you to say, because it's not intentional.
Well, it is intentional. I mean, we're a product of all the choices we make. You know?
That is true. That is true. But what I mean by that, it's not intentional. I don't intentionally set out to do some of the things that I've done.
No, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. But I mean, let's delve into your story, and I'll share some of mine too, because there are a few, not many, but there are one or two parallels, like the loss of my brother, and you lost a sister. We'll talk about that. Yeah. But you had a remarkable dad, Chris Hani, famous dad, and that comes with lots of pluses and lots of difficulties too, because living in the shadow of someone who's such a heroic figure also has its downsides. But tell us a bit about the early childhood. You speak so highly, and in fact, the book you wrote, you contributed to that book. Lessons from Our Father. Yes. And just tell us some of the beautiful things you learned from your dad in the early years. You were 12, I think, when he passed away.
That's correct. Yeah. So I always used to, and I actually know it's in the past, because I've come a very long way. But after my dad was assassinated, I always used to say that it's a blessing and a curse, being Chris Hani's daughter, because it comes with so many amazing things. But the biggest is that I was his daughter. So, I mean, from the early years, my dad, he was always present, like by the time that I came, because when I was born, he had stopped then living with us as a family. So we used to visit him. So he was in and around the continent, but Lesotho was getting too dangerous for him to be living there.
Right.
So I think he left by the time I was around 18 months or so.
Okay.
So I have no memory of physically living with my dad from a young age. But what I remember is that it doesn't matter what kind of day that I had, like he would call. And he would speak to each and every one of us. And and the thing is, as a child, I would just go on, Craig, like everything that you'd want to tell your dad, like, this is what I did at school, and then this, and then my friend did that, and then this, and then I'm running. And I would take the longest because there's no rhyme or reason. But he would listen and he'd be patient and everything. So he was an incredible father. He was kind. He never ever made us feel, because we were 3 girls.
Right.
And we never felt like something was lacking.
Right.
He actually...
It was like he wanted a son and you came along.
No. He actually he made us feel prouder that he had girls. So he would teach us things. He would always say, this is what you need to learn. So I used to, being the last born, I used to want to be exactly like my father. So when he exercised, I'd copy him. Everything that he did, So...
Daddy's girl, huh?
I was a daddy's girl. I was a daddy's girl for sure. And I was sporty and he was sporty. So we used to do things like swim together. So when I was living in Lesotho, we'd see my dad for like once a year for 3 months. But, I never felt the difficulty. I always say that I am so grateful that my parents made that decision to raise us in Lesotho. Mama is a Lesotho woman.
Okay.
So her family was in Lesotho.
Right.
So that gave us a family structure and stability. I had my grandfather, my aunts, and my cousins. We grew up in a community as opposed to being scattered in other parts of the continent and not belonging.
It's that real village that raises a child.
It's that real village, and we had that. So we always felt supported. So my father, it was always like a bonus. So it's in the book, it's in my memoir, but I always say that I remember one Christmas, when those real life dolls came about, my mom and my parents bought me a black one. It was called George. I don't know why George, but it was George.
A male doll.
A male doll. I used to change George's nappy and everything. So when we went to Lusaka to visit Daddy, I'll never forget, when we walked out of arrivals, I saw him and I ran. And before even hugging me, I threw George in his arms and said, meet your grandson. And of course, he took George, admired George. And if I had things to do, like play with other children, I'd say, please, can you babysit George? And you take George to ANC meetings.
That's fantastic.
So that's the kind of man he was.
He sounds like he was a bit ahead of his time as a man in terms of his... the way he dealt with you as daughters, the way he loved your mom. There wasn't the sort of male, men do this and women do that. There was kind of a real sense of we're in this together.
I think so. I think so. And, I think it's also because they were also a family of boys.
Okay.
So I think that he used to probably help his mom out a lot because his dad was also away working in Western Cape.
Right.
So with 3 boys, I'm sure he did a lot of things to help his mama because he was extremely progressive.
Yes.
My mom would tell me that, for example, he used to wash our, remember cloth nappies? He used to wash them.
Not many men of that age did.
No, he would wash them and everything. Yeah. However, though, if the comrades came over, then you stop. So it was help with a caveat.
The ego crept up there. Men don't do this.
Men don't do that. Yeah. But also maybe, I think it wasn't necessarily because men don't do that for him. It was because he was also, there's another role he was playing.
I'm with you.
He was a leader of soldiers and etc.
Right.
So you have to kind of play. But we in exile were always surrounded by men.
Right.
Because there were soldiers that he always had soldiers around him, the MK soldiers. So we were surrounded, and they were always, because we were girls, they had to figure out that softer side.
Right.
Because we were not, I would climb on them, play with their beards. So the thing is, Daddy always made sure in our home, it was always children first, right? And that was also very progressive. But yeah, my dad always told us we can do anything we put our minds to.
Right.
And he encouraged discussion.
Fantastic.
He encouraged discussion. He also had asked us at one point, because we had said that we never see him, we miss him, we don't live with him. We don't want him to do this anymore. And he did say that, if you guys asked me, I would resign from the ANC tomorrow and I'll find something else to do.
Family first, huh?
Family first.
Beautiful.
But then he did say that if I do make that choice, understand that I'll be unhappy.
Right. Yeah.
What do you want? Do you want an unhappy father or a father who's living his purpose?
Right.
He didn't phrase it exactly like that, but I think essentially that's what he was saying.
Right.
And we chose a father.
That's amazing. That's a wonderful
purpose.
story, an amazing story. Yeah. I mean, the foundation that a good, loving, present father gives is phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what's amazing about this story is as a dad, you can be, even if you're not physically present, you can still be present.
Yes.
You're emotionally, spiritually present. You're there with your voice in terms of calls. I mean, I went through a divorce, and my kids, for a little while, they came to live with me eventually, but a little while didn't, and I was able to be a present dad. What's up? I mean, now we have FaceTime.
Yes.
It's a phenomenal thing. So that foundation that he laid was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And when we moved to the country, I mean, the only exciting thing was that we were moving together as a family, home. It was always about home. Like, as much as I consider, even to this day, Lesotho my home, but Daddy was very adamant that it's temporary, you know, and you know, very clear, that's your mother's home. That's not your home, you know. So when we moved to Lesotho and we were all together, I'll never forget that first Christmas when we were all there with no furniture because we moved in December. So what my mother did was just go to Hyperama and get pool chairs.
Okay. Right.
So very white trashy. And we had like outside chairs in the house, but we didn't care.
Right.
Because it was the
Well,
first
home
time
is
that
where
we
the
were all
family is,
together.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, true home is where the family, where the love is,
Absolutely.
which is beautiful. Yeah.
So then I had like a full, almost 2 years of having a physically present father. Because I think that's how long we lived as a family before he was assassinated.
And then everything came to a shattering halt at the age of 12, which is a very impressionable age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about that period of time, if you don't mind.
No, I don't. I mean, the easiest way to describe it was just utter confusion. Our family imploded. Imploded. And it was on the eve of us still trying to figure out how to be with each other because we had teething pains. I mean, it wasn't as harmonious and honeymoon as it was.
Sure.
We had Daddy had to learn us. We had to learn him. He believed Mama had spoilt us because we didn't have a proper bedtime per se. I was allowed to watch risque shows like Dynasty and Dallas. He thought I was underage.
Right.
And all he wanted to do, that man, was to either watch or listen to the news 24 hours
That was
a
his
day,
obsession,
right?
his mandate.
So already there's a clash of the TV. Luckily, his wife loves him so much and wanted peace in her home that she bought him another TV for
That's the solution.
bedroom, you know. And so when he was assassinated, it was completely confusing because as much as I knew what my dad did and I knew who he was, I didn't know. I didn't know that he was Chris Hani.
You didn't realize the severity of it.
Not even the severity, but the impact of it.
And the risk, perhaps.
No, the risk we always knew because even in Lesotho, every morning my mom would go to the car, make us stand a few hundred meters away, open the bonnet, look for bombs.
Amazing.
Because my dad told her that if she pretends to know what she's doing, the people who are watching will assume she does. Right.
What a way to live.
It was crazy. It was crazy the way we had to live under apartheid. So the risk was always there. I mean, already when we moved to South Africa in that 2 years, he had like 2 attempts on his life already. So we weren't nervous.
Yeah.
We weren't nervous. I think we just didn't expect it that soon.
Right.
So it imploded. Our entire family imploded. And I was lost. I didn't know what to do. It was just incredibly painful.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get told as a 12-year-old that you have to be strong. The country's watching.
Wow.
You don't cry.
Where did that come from, that message?
It came from another comrade.
Right.
It came from another politician.
Yeah.
So they told me that the country's watching and I shouldn't cry.
Wow.
And that's the message that I carried on.
So you had to hide your grief in a way,
Had
or
to
suppress
hide my
it.
grief. I had to suppress my grief because of optics.
Right.
So I think
And
that's
as a
the
12-year-old,
first
that's
time.
a lot to ask.
That's everything to ask, and I think that's how I learned to then do it going forward.
Right.
You know, don't let people know how you're feeling. Suppression. So going through that and everything, and it was chaotic.
Sure.
It was chaotic. You're trying to make sense of a trauma and trying to grieve in chaos.
And you're still a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just
And
dealing with normal teenage stuff.
Not even, because I was still preteen.
Right.
I turned 13 later that year.
Right.
So, and also one of the things that happens when that kind of tragedy occurs, children get forgotten.
Right.
I was forgotten. You know, I think that we also underestimate what children feel, especially then. I think we've come a long way in terms of our
knowledge.
knowledge. But back then, remember, we must be what's seen
Seen
and not heard.
Right, right. Yeah.
So I think I got lost. I got lost in that hole.
And your mom was devastated and grieving as well. Huh?
Absolutely. And I think that she had to then be the parent again.
Yes.
You know, the only parent again. Because even in our childhood, as much as just a single parent to a large circumstance, but my dad was there as a support, you know.
Yeah.
So now she had to figure it out in public, you know, and then she was nominated to be in parliament. So then she became a parliamentarian. Yeah, so everything.
So she was forced to be
changed.
strong and stoic and put up the optics as well, I guess. Eh?
Yeah, but she grew up being that.
Right.
You know, she grew up being that.
Yeah.
So like the dynamics of two parents, my dad was the one who was more the nurturer actually and the talker.
Right.
You know, and then my mother was more of the hardcore, old school disciplinarian that we all know. So the softness, left, you know. So one gets left. I was stuck.
Right.
I was stuck. So, and one of the other parts about grief is that when everyone leaves, when you're confronted with the silence, and then when you're now in the home, in every corner you go, it's just ghosts.
Right.
You know, but we didn't stay in that house too long because we were getting threats. So we moved.
Threats even after that?
Threats even after that. They'll come finish what they started.
The nightmare didn't end, eh?
No, because remember there was still the trial.
Yeah. Wow, Lindiwe. Phenomenal. I mean, the childhood trauma, we know more and more now, the impact it has on our lives. And a lot of it goes undetected and we just go through life.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't get worse than that. Tell us, as you went into your teens and then moved on, I know in your 20s it was a tumultuous time of turning to all kinds of things we all do that. We turn to stuff to dull the pain, you know.
Yeah.
Some of us turn to things that are socially acceptable, like overworking and over gymming or whatever. But there's drugs and there's sex and there's rock and roll and all these different.
Absolutely. I mean, we all have addictions, you know. Yeah. So that's the one thing that I have no shame about, you know, because it shouldn't be shameful.
No, it shouldn't.
And it is that. It is that shame spiral that I think keeps a lot of people sick and still in active addiction with certain things. But when Daddy died, my mom, as I mentioned, went to Parliament.
Right.
So she gave my sister and I, because my eldest sister was at varsity when my dad died. So she went back to UCT. And then I spent one more year in Johannesburg, and I wasn't doing well. Right. I wasn't doing well. That was when I...
grade?
Standard. How now I have to count plus two.
Yeah.
When did he die? I was in standard 5.
Standard 5, okay.
Standard 6.
Yeah, well, primary school, first year of high school.
Standard 6. So grade 8, right? Yeah. So I stayed one more year in Johannesburg, but I wasn't doing well at school. I wasn't doing well all around. That's when I secretly even tried to commit suicide. And I mean secretly because no one knew except my cousin in Lesotho. It didn't work because I was 13 and I decided to take Panados.
Right.
So the worst that happened is
thank goodness you only took those.
Threw up the next morning. But that's even the secrecy of that.
Right.
You know, everything I was doing was just under the darkness.
You couldn't put the face out there because it wasn't accepted.
No, but I didn't even know how to. You know, I hadn't learned any of the tools, you know, about how to ask for help, how to
express grief.
Right, exactly, any of that. So my mom
and there was no one there to help you through that. No one.
There were many people there, but I mean, my sister was 2 years older than me, so she was 16.
She was also dealing with it.
But even worse so because she was present when my dad died. She was in the house.
Wow.
So she saw him, you know, so she went through that.
Yeah.
You know, and also at the age we did not like each other, you know.
Sibling rivalry.
Not even like she was a pain. Actually, I was a younger pain. I thought she was obnoxious, you know. So we weren't really getting along. So it was lonely. Mama was up and down Joburg, Cape Town. So then my mom said to me, what do you want to do? So I said, let me go to boarding school. So that's when I went to Cape Town. I went to St. Cyprian, and I think that's what saved my life.
Right.
You know, I think that I was missing a family. And St. Cyprian's gave me that in the boarding
sisterhood,
school, 100%. And then also living with my aunt on weekends, being around her and her 2 sons and my uncle, another sense of family.
Right.
And that's what I thrive on. So that was great. It was really, really wonderful. not that I stopped grieving and everything, it was continuous. But there I felt I started to find out who I am, and go through life. And I thrived. I thrived at St. Cyprian's. And then when I went to varsity, and also at St. Cyprian's, weed, you drink now and then, go to school bashes, go see Tebe at GCT when you're in high school, all the things teenagers do. So it was still in a whole lot of fun, in my opinion.
I want to send this to the head mistress.
She knows. But it was still very child fun,
Right.
And then I got into a relationship that took me through the first year. And then in my first year of varsity, then he passed away.
Oh my goodness.
He had a car accident.
Yeah.
And then everything just came back.
The grief just resurfaced.
Resurfaced times 100.
Yeah.
Oh, just before he passed away, I had found out that I was pregnant.
Wow.
And I realized, we made a decision that we didn't want anyone raising our child. And it was my first year. So I made the decision to have an abortion. And then he passed away a month later. So it was all of
loss
that.
upon loss upon
loss. Loss upon loss, Craig, And then my sister, Kwezi, then came to Cape Town to help just take care of me and everything.
Right.
Then I got a bit stronger. And then she went back to Joburg. And she was in Joburg for 3 months. And then she passed away.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So that's when I think I was just like, this.
The world is
just cruel.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you're just like, why are the ones that I love the most the ones being taken away? Is it me?
Right.
What's going on?
That thought actually came to you.
Yeah. It had to be
something
me.
wrong with me.
Something's wrong with me. I'm attracting this.
Wow.
And I remember for a very long time, I used to pray that, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep.
Yes.
I used to pray the Lord my soul to take.
Right.
Because the one thing I knew is that I didn't want to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Because I just felt like the ones who had lost their life didn't want to die.
Right.
So who am I to take that option? But at the same time,
you didn't want to live.
I didn't want to live.
Yeah.
So I was in purgatory.
Yeah.
Not alive, not dead,
Yeah.
And you just continue, Craig. And then I think that's when I became in a downward spiral, started drinking a whole lot more, getting into accidents, just extremely
bit of a self-destructive
very
mode.
much self-destructive behavior, And then on my 21st birthday, I got introduced to cocaine.
Yeah.
And apparently the rumor was that they thought I was doing coke already. And initially when I had been offered before, but I used to say no. I just had no interest. But that time when I was offered, I remember thinking, why the not?
Yeah. Nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. So I did it and I loved it. And then I got involved in an extremely 13-year tumultuous relationship with cocaine. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. And just, it's so wonderful having authentic conversations around these things.
Yeah.
Because so many, we all have stuff. And when other people talk about their stuff, it gives us permission to actually talk about our stuff and find healing. And, I just love the way you are now, dynamic, attractive, a force for good, and so you've come out of that, man. You overcame that. You tell us the journey for
that.
Because that's a triumph. That's a victory.
Yeah.
So I just want to say one thing. So many people talk about where they're at and how, but they're not real about where they were.
Yes,
and I think it's so important.
I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for where I was what happened. Gosh, I don't know how many times I used to pray for a different life.
Yeah.
Many times I used to say, I hate my life.
Right.
Wanting something different. But this is the one life that we have. And it's ugly. It's ugly, it's chaotic, it's beautiful, it's all of those things,
Cruel, crazy, beautiful. Remember the Johnny Clegg song?
Right?
That's exactly it.
So I had my daughter in 2004, right? And I had her because, for very selfish reasons, I wanted somebody to love. I needed somebody to love. And I thought that with all the deaths that we've had, that I went through, that life should be something positive. And I also I felt that it would get me on the right track.
Right.
And as much as I knew it wasn't bringing Kwezi back.
Mm-hmm.
There was a part of me that was just like, you know, it's just about getting something back.
Right.
You know, so I had my daughter, and then I maintained sobriety for I think at least 3 years between pregnancy and her birth, and then I went right back to it. And I wasn't a habitual user; I was a binge user.
Right.
So I could not use for 2 weeks and then use, you know, and stuff like that.
Yes.
And then, of course, it gets perpetually worse and worse and worse. So that's what happened.
Yeah.
So I was a very functional parent. I use the word functional, not present, because I did everything I needed to do, you know, to a large extent, in terms of taking care of a child.
Yes.
But I wasn't emotionally present at all.
For yourself either, really. Yeah?
Neither.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I realize now in retrospect that even when I wasn't high, I was thinking about my next high.
About the next hit.
You know what I mean? When is it gonna be? And then you'd find ways to make it happen, you know? So when I finally hit my version of rock bottom was I had no friends by then. I mean, I had managed to completely alienate every single person in my life. My behavior was atrocious. It was unacceptable. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was everything.
Right.
I completely understood. No, I understand now. Then I didn't understand.
Right.
I was, of course, woe is me once again. And I realized that I had no friends. I was high. And in that state of being so high, Craig, I'll never forget, I had clear as day that I'm going to die. Not right then, but this is going to escalate to the point that I'll be on the streets of Hellbrow now doing crack and the next drug, because this was no longer doing what it was. I was doing it more often.
Right.
And higher quantities.
You'd lost control.
I had lost control, but I was also not, I was still chasing that high of yesteryear.
Right.
You know, the one that got me hooked.
Yes.
You know, and you'll never catch it, right? So I had that epiphany clear as day, and I didn't mind. I had no problem.
There was
with
that
the
sense of,
concept death.
I don't want to live.
Yeah, it was almost a relief. I was
yeah.
like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then I remembered my daughter.
Sure.
And then that's when I thought about the fact that if I die, my daughter is going to also grow up with the idea of the thoughts that she wasn't good enough for me to stop using. And I saw her pick up her first drug.
Amazing.
And I was like, oh, no.
And that became the moment.
I was like, I have to stop it
For
now.
her.
For her. She cannot use drugs because of me. You know, or I should not be the emotional trauma that leads her into the life. Exactly what happened to me.
Right.
I just felt it happened to her, and I was like, it has to stop somewhere. And then,
and she was about 3 years old then, huh?
No, she was Kaya when I went into rehab. She was 9 years old.
9 years old, right?
She was 9 years old.
Yeah.
So I called my sister, and I said, I need help.
Wow.
And then the following week, I went into rehab for the next 2 months. And then I came out and my life was just fear-based recovery. So avoid everything and everyone that might make you relapse.
But you were determined at that point.
I was determined. When I say out of 7 days a week, I was in meetings 6 days a week.
And Kaya was your inspiration, huh?
She was absolutely my inspiration, but she was never going to be a strong reason for me to stay sober.
Right.
So
you
now
to do it for
I had
yourself
to,
as well.
exactly. Yeah. So when I went into rehab, Craig, that's when I had a checklist.
Yeah.
So you go into primary. Well, not I mean, I'll say I'm assuming everybody here is like me. But you go initially into like primary care. That's when if you're still in denial, you come to terms that you're an addict, an alcoholic, whatever it may be. I didn't have those denial. I knew it. But I think I was still like, la-di-da, I'm going to get clean and stuff. But then the real work starts. So I realized that as soon as anything had to deal with emotions, so like, for example, a family member had to write a letter. And my sister wrote a letter about how my addiction impacts our family.
Sure.
That was so difficult to hear. And I'll never forget, as soon as I heard it, I went straight to the nurse's office. I said, I have a headache. And then she looked at my file and said, oh, I see you got a letter. And then she said, drink some water, stay with it. That's what they used to say, because I realized that my escapism was pills or drugs.
Right.
Or then when they wouldn't give me drugs, I started napping. So every time I had difficulty with an emotion, I'd sleep.
You fall asleep, yeah.
I got banned from sleeping too because they were trying to teach me.
They forced you to face it head on.
Stay with it. Wow. Stay with the way you're feeling, because they said things pass. I never allowed anything to pass. Just as soon as it entered, I was like, oh, that cannot do.
You need the anesthetic.
I need the anesthetic. Yeah. So then when I went to secondary now, which is where you now get in deeper. Before I went there, because I had told Kaya initially I'm going in for a month and then I'll come out. So then I had to ask for a second month for Kaya. And then she said, fine, she understood, but I could see she was not happy. So I realized I don't have an opportunity to wait. So when I went into the secondary part of my rehab, I went with a checklist. Things I need to deal with. I wrote Daddy, Mama, Kwezi, my late boyfriend, my abortion. I literally wrote down a checklist. And then, of course, you do the 12 steps and everything. But with every a session that we had, a group sessions, I would always choose to start. Who wants to begin? And I'd begin. I'm like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that.
So you intentionally went into the pain, huh?
I had to. I had to, in order to come out the other side with something different.
Was it raw and gritty and painful?
Hard. It was painful.
Agonizing.
It was really, really, really painful.
Respect.
You know?
Disrespect for going there. Because, I mean, that's you can't go around it or under it. You've got to go through it. Eh?
You have to. And it was really difficult. But then when I came out, life wasn't sweet. I got retrenched immediately, you know. But it also just, they say life on life terms. I had to learn to be humble.
Right.
I had to learn. I couldn't have done it without my sister's support and my brother-in-law. I mean, they were just like, when they retrenched me, then she said, just come help me. And I went to help her. And I spent a lot of time with my niece. At that time, she was in nursery school. And that was such a good part of my healing, because I love children. I always say that where I fall in life, I don't love people, because people can people. My favorite people are children and old people, right? Because those are the most honest in life. Because I don't like playing games and things like that. So it was difficult. And then Melinda approached me to write the memoir.
Right.
So it was therapy continue, because I had to go through every, when you go back in your life and the memories. Yeah. So I'll never forget, it felt like even as I was going through the book and writing it, it was still leading up to 93. And then I had to write about the 10th. Floodgates.
I'm sure.
Floodgates. And then while we were writing the book, I decided then I wanted to meet the killers. Yeah. So everything, and the reason that I wanted to meet Janusz and Clive Derby Lewis was I felt that since they killed my father, I was in prison. I had this fear all the time. Walus was this complete ogre giant, that I was always petrified of and everything. And I just wanted to take my power back. Wow. I wanted to meet them and just see that they're people. So even when I met Walus, I didn't have fear. And then when I saw him walking in, first of all, the first thing that I remember was just being so annoyed at how healthy he still looks. Like, he was this strapping man, still very much vital. And even when he sat down, I don't even know where it came from, but I think just through recovery and rehab and groups and therapy, like the first question I asked him was, tell me about your childhood. Because I wanted to see if I had anything in common. Right. Not even a driving factor, but do I have anything in common with this person? So everything, Craig, that I've tried to do, I actually realized that the last week why I've been pushing myself in this road of always healing and self-reflection is because I want to make sure that when I die, I leave as little intergenerational trauma for Kaya as I can.
Fantastic.
And that means me dealing with my shit in real time and her watching me go through it.
Fantastic.
Because I feel like otherwise it's just gonna be a perpetual cycle that continues if I don't deal with it. And that's why also it was so important for me to deal with my dad's death, because she's the next generation of Hani. She's Chris Hani's granddaughter.
Right.
That also comes with certain obligations for her. but I wanted her to approach it with a healthier
The clean slate.
mentality than I have had to.
Yeah.
You know?
That is so admirable. You know, I do a lot of work with men, and I always say to men that our mandate is to break the cycle. Whatever happened behind us, whether it's alcohol abuse, racism, whatever, it stops here. It stops. And that's what you're doing for the next generation. There's a beautiful thing that says maybe you're the gift that your bloodline's been waiting for. And I can honestly say you are that. You know, I mean, you're changing things. You're stopping whatever was pain and turning it into something that's a triumph.
I can feel it. I can feel it. You know, like, because even like currently in my life, I mean, everyone goes through life challenges. I'm going through my own as well. But Craig, I'll be lying to you if I say I've never been happier.
Fantastic.
You know, like I've never felt so certain of who I am and where I'm going, you know, and in order for at least me to get here, I had to break down.
Sure.
You know, I had to, well, not I had to break down. I was broken. Currently this week, I always go have a song of the day or whatever, but the last 2 days, the song that's been playing in my head is like Broken Wing. And now I'm just telling about myself. I'm a secret country fan. Right? So it's Broken Wing by Martina McBride. And it's just about carrying on even though you still have a broken wing, because all of us are flawed humans.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, like when I went into rehab, I'll never forget another addict telling me and then giving me the book, and one of the inscriptions was, "Blessed are the addicts." Because I always say that the greatest gift that I could have given myself was to go into rehab, because we don't always get the gift of pause, of reflection.
Right.
You know, life keeps going.
It does.
I got the opportunity for 2 months
To tune out.
to tune out everything except me.
Yeah.
And if I had not taken that gift, it would have been such a loss.
Sure.
It would have been such a waste of time as well.
But you know, this healing doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen by default. It happens by intentionally walking into the hell that hurt us. And you did that, and it takes a huge amount of courage.
I wanted happiness.
Yeah.
I wanted, you know, like one of the pushing factors was that I didn't want to leave this earth without feeling happiness. I was like, death, trauma, addiction. Where is
The joy in life,
the happiness,
the
you know?
stuff
So
that life.
I wanted to find it. I've been,
Right.
seek for it. And I think that desperation to have something that you've been yearning your whole life is a great motivator, you know?
Well, it is, but you know, the thing is that we mostly look for that happiness in the escapes and in the anesthetics, because that's the easy way of doing it, you know. I'm feeling sad, so I eat, or I take what, you know, but to look for it through the pain and through the fire, that's where it's truly found, you know. And I mean, you're a great testimony to that. And I mean, not only will you hand over a legacy of healing and healedness, but you're also able to do that for your current generation and the people that, you know, because your story is an inspiration and the lessons you've learned are an inspiration. And that's beautiful. You know, I want to go back, if you don't mind, to Jonas, because it's a mind-blowing story that, you know, even me sitting here hearing you say that, I read about it, and, you know, when I was doing some research on you, not stalking, just research, it's a remarkable thing that, you know, it's admirable. But when you talk about grief, I lost a brother to suicide, and I didn't deal with it well at the time. I was 23, he was 20, and when people asked me about it, I said, I'm not going there. I don't want to go. You know, you can't understand. You know, I don't want. You know, when he died, you after the funeral, you walk along the beach and you want the world to stop and take note, and you know, you want things to, but nothing changes. You know, the wave's still crashing, people still talking and laughing, and you just think it's so unfair and so wrong. You know, so I didn't even talk about it for 2 years. But the weird thing is, he was in Australia. He fled South Africa because of the army, went to Australia, and we used to communicate via letter or tape. He used to make these cassette tapes, you know.
So old, Greg.
So old, I know. I won't ask you how old you are.
Well, considering that I know what cassette tapes are.
you identify, yeah, exactly. Cassette tapes, yeah. And I had kept one of these cassette tapes for 15 years. Didn't listen to it. And then about 10 years ago, I'd just gotten married to my second wife. I went and I got it transcribed onto a CD. And I came home the one day and I put the CD on and I started listening. I tell you what, after 5 minutes, I was sobbing. You know, this is 17 years after his death. I just was absolutely, I couldn't. My wife came running into the, what's wrong?
Was it music or him?
No, it was him talking. It was him talking. You know, it was a verbal letter, you know, and it was him just talking, and it just broke me. I just couldn't listen to it. And I was so blown away that after 17 years, just hearing his voice and him talking to me in a letter, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know? So I mean, that pain is real and it doesn't go away. You know? It's deep and big, and it changes you forever.
Oh, completely. I think that I always say that. I don't know. I don't like. Comparing death. You know. But when Kwezi died, definitely, I broke. I think I broke for good, and I think even now I'm still completely broken. It's a piece of yourself, Craig. I mean, you know, it's a piece of yourself that is gone forever.
Yeah, and no one can truly understand that.
No one can truly understand.
Because you had a unique interaction with
did.
that human
and
being.
Also, these are the people you've gone through hell back with, you know, and it's just that peace and pain. I think of not. Because everyone always says that we're here for you, etc. And they're great people. But I think that when you lose a sister and when you lose a sibling, it's almost, I would say, it's almost like losing a limb.
That's a part of your history, your life.
Yes, it's like losing a limb and you have to go through life learning how to live without it. You know, so like even Kwezi is definitely the trauma that I've refused, and I've refused to completely deal with, because I have never been ready. So I completely understand when you say, when you heard that, how it felt like yesterday.
Oh yeah, that voice.
I wish I had that, but I also wish I didn't. So it's very weird. And she's the next cross that I have to.
Too.
Yes, and this one is going to be the most difficult, I think, because I miss her every day.
Right.
You know, and it's lonely a lot of the times. And I think that even just the way that she died and everything, there's just still a lot of unanswered questions and lack of closure, you know? So I think that I have to delve through her and I to get through to the other side. But Jesus, that one hurts all the time.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And it takes a song or a smell or a sunset. You know, so many things remind you, eh?
They do. And a lot of the times it's great.
Yeah.
So like, for example, she was born on the 11th of November, and I'll look at my phone, I see 11/11, I'll go, hi, Chris. So I always get these things where I'm like, I know she's listening or whatever. And because of also the way that I've just become in tune in terms of spiritually as well, I do feel her, but there's always will be a part of me that just wants to talk to her, you know? So I think that with every single loss, it's so important, for me at least, to understand what the loss means to me.
Right.
You know, what the impact of that loss has done. Because in that way, then I learn how to navigate it. Because there's no way, I mean, show me anyone who's lost any single person, then they can tell me they're over it.
No.
You don't get over loss.
You get through
it.
Yeah.
You learn how to navigate it. You learn how to live with it, you know.
Yeah.
And it almost, for me, it's become the fabrics of my persona. You know, I always hate the fact that it always feels like, initially it always felt like I was clothed in death. Remember I even mentioned that, why does it happen around me? But now I've shrugged it off because it's not me.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me. And what I've now leaned on is not the cloak of death. It's more of the inspiration of these people's lives.
Fantastic.
And how lucky was I that they chose me to be a part of.
Amazing.
You know?
Well, you know, I mean, looking at you and just chatting with you, you've chosen life. And I mean, the greatest gift you can give those who are departed is to live your life to the full. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that Chris Hani looking down would want you to flourish and thrive, and Kwezi too want you just to be the very best Lindiwe you can possibly be.
I said
and you're
that.
doing that, you're doing that.
I actually said that. I said, because like as I've gotten, because part of also what I've had to navigate is also living under my dad's shadow,
Yeah,
you know?
It's a big shadow.
And someone once said, how am I now? So I'm like, now I feel like I am walking alongside it. I'm no longer under it. And that's because I fought so hard to figure out who the Lindiwe Hani is, you know? And so the reason that I have chosen life is, and I always said that when people, I'm like, one of the greatest gifts that I feel like I've given Kwezi and Dedi now is that these guys can finally rest in peace. They worked hard, guys, keeping me from death when I was high.
Right.
I always ended up back home safely.
Yeah.
Sometimes my car would be so up, but nah, I'm home safe.
You're okay.
Passed the out. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
How do I explain those things? Between God and my ancestors, people were working overtime. So I felt that very recently, like in the last 15 years or so, after so many years, is the first time that my father could be like, okay, maybe I can, maybe now I can
she's
sleep,
good. She's
you know? So I'm really glad that I could do that for them, you know, and I feel it.
Fantastic.
I feel it.
You absolutely have.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at you, absolutely have. I mean, you've chosen life and you're living life. You're shining, and you know, there's a beautiful thing that Mandela quoted. I'll probably mess it up, but you know, who are you not to be fabulous? You know, when we shine, we give others permission to shine as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That's true, and you're doing that. You know, the very most interesting, amazing human beings are those who've been through the worst. You know, I mean, if you've been through addiction, you know it, you understand it, and you've overcome something massive. You've overcome something that most people don't understand, because addiction is powerful. But you're powerful that you're so powerful having overcome it that you can help others do the same, you know, and that brings a depth and a character and a spine that you can't get just by not going through these things.
And it's for life.
It's for life.
It's for life. Like I always say that my proudest badge is that, and people say, oh my God, and they whisper it, you're a recovering addict. And I'm like, don't whisper it. It's true. You know, like people like to say things like they're bad or whatever, but it is who I am, you know, and it's part of it. And you know, when you carry that badge, you remind yourself, like the life that I have now, Craig, there are also moments that I'm just like, Jesus, can I have a line? You know? And I have to play that movie in my head. Okay, Lindy, you can't have just one line. Let's play the movie. What's going to happen, you know? And I look at my life as it currently stands. I'm like, I would lose all this for that one line. So there's still a back and forth.
Sure, there's a battle.
It's still a fight. But what happens now in my life, I just look at everything I have and it's not worth it. Whereas in my past, I didn't have anything that I felt was worth it. Even though my daughter and my family were there, inside myself, I was dead. If you feel like you are not good enough or you're worthless, what are you fighting for? You can have everybody around. You can have the greatest husband, the best children. But if you're walking life feeling like the worst person to ever be, you will not win. You know?
And in fact, you want to kill yourself slowly. Even though you don't want to commit suicide, you're doing stuff that would lead to it, because you're actually committing it slowly.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is that I think that it's also like, part of what do we keep doing in terms of just doing good. Like I always say to my daughter that I don't necessarily expect you to be anything outside of who you are. So she always says, Mom, I'm not religious. I'm like, I actually don't care. But are you spiritual? Because I do believe in believing something bigger than yourself. You know, and I said, Kaya, as long as you and I, if our family philosophy is always doing the next right thing, you know, when no one is watching, you know, what does that do? And that's why, Craig, I'm so glad I met you and with your Force for Good, because even through the communities that I have become a part of, it's just, you know, when you walk life with people.
It's lovely.
When you walk life with communities, like what you are trying to do for this country is so essential. And it's so necessary. You know, because when Kaya was young, and I have been a single parent for most of Kaya's life, you know, like there's always on Father's Day, you know, like a single mother, like, I'm doing the job too. I always used to say to Kaya, I'm not your father.
Right.
I cannot be something I don't know how to be. And that's why even when I was pregnant, I had to find out if I was having a girl or a boy, because if I was going to have a boy, I felt like I needed therapy because we didn't have boys. I didn't know what to do with a boy.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't know how to raise a man. So that's why I prayed so hard for a girl, because I was just like, I cannot raise a man. How do I? What do I teach them?
Right.
You know?
But that's the beauty of life, is that we need each other. You know, I mean, I can't teach my daughter how to be a woman.
Yeah.
I can't. I can teach her how to be a good human being, but when it comes to that, and my wife can't teach my son how to be a man. That's why we need each other.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the village, isn't it? The beautiful village. You know, I mean, we're living in a very unfathered nation, sadly. But the point is, we have so many good men. So that can be an uncle, a grandfather, a brother, a coach, male teacher. But when men and women realize that we are equal but stunningly different and we need each other in different ways, the world becomes so much better, doesn't it?
It does.
Because we co-create. You know?
Absolutely.
We co-create the world.
Absolutely.
It's not a zero-sum game, isn't it? You know?
No. And the thing is, we are so complementary.
100. We're designed to complement each other.
100%. And the thing is, in certain instances, we're so adversarial.
Yeah.
And you and I touched briefly on it when we were in Franschhoek. It's just that the role of men, especially in South African homes, has just varied so much that it's difficult for everyone to catch up.
Yeah.
Like, remember we were saying that, for example, everyone says that, what do we need men for now? Especially if women can go out, you earn the bacon, and then you still have to come home and cook it.
Right.
You know, what do we need men for? And I remember when I was still single, I kept on thinking that it's not about needing, and it's not about really wanting. It's just about what would complement.
Absolutely.
Right? What would help complete the circle.
Exactly.
You know, we're also not solitary creatures.
We're not. And the masculine energy and the feminine energy are so beautifully complementary, aren't they? You know, you've got the warrior and the nurturer, and you got, and of course we can flip roles when needed. Men can watch nappies and women can fight battles, but the natural state of that masculine and feminine working together. I mean, you exist and I exist because a man got together with a woman and they conceived us.
You listen, I may not be very popular because I do consider myself a feminist, but I do think that there's definitely something to be said about roles in the home, you know, and there's certain roles that I believe should stay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's certain roles that we have a predisposition towards. And a tendency and a drive towards, and it's God designed and God made, and it works beautifully with equal respect and admiration.
But I
and
think
equal
that's
opportunity.
that's where we're missing each other.
Yeah, I agree.
It's that equal mutual respect.
Correct.
You know?
Correct. Yeah. In one sense, we're not. In one sense, we're not equal. You know, a man marries a woman. Physically, he's bigger than her. Generally, you know. I mean, but of equal value. And,
definitely value.
I mean, that's the thing. I did a TEDx talk about power differentials, and it was quite interesting because we often say everything is because of power differentials, which is nonsense because power differentials are baked into the universe.
Yeah.
You know? What's wrong is when power differentials are used for abuse. You know, imagine if we had to equate everything. You know, so a man marries a woman and he has to fast and eat gruel to get skinny, and she has to pump iron to get, so we equal strength, and and if she's earning more than him, that's not allowed because it would be ludicrous. So,
yeah.
I mean, we're different, but we need to use that to love, to serve, to protect, to honor, to respect. And when we do that, life works, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, like, listen, I was single for many years raising Kaya. And then my partner came into my life and he used to just look at me, simple things, very simple things. Like when I would leave the car, of course, I get groceries out and everything. And then he used to say to me, why do you keep doing that?
Yeah.
So I'd be like, but I'm used to it. He goes, he's not used to it. So, but now he regrets it because I don't do shit. I don't take out the bin. I don't change a light. I don't do anything.
Has he created a monster then?
He has created a monster. He has created a monster, absolutely.
But I'm sure he's not complaining and neither are you. So
I'm happy.
Any final words? This has been such a wonderful conversation. We could carry on for hours, but any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? I think the final thought is that it doesn't matter how long you have a great man in your life. It doesn't matter how long you may have that influence. It's necessary. I think that I'm so grateful for the 12 years that I had the father that I had. And he has made sure that he has taught me self-love, which is one of the things that women especially need to know about as well. And I'm actually so grateful for my life and the trauma that I've had to endure because it has made me the woman that I am today. And I remember there were times when I used to compare myself with my counterparts. Oh, they're this, they're not addicts. But I realized that everything that has happened to me has been for me to be sitting right here and having this conversation with you. So I think the final words is that, guy, we need to lean into our pain, and we need to lean into our trauma, and we need to share it, because I think the one thing that even as a country, we even rushed it in 94 was healing. You can't rush healing.
We haven't done that yet.
And when you rush it, it comes back and bites you in the ass, hence therefore our country's like this today.
Exactly.
So I just think that what you're doing, keep on doing it.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Well, I want to honor you for your strength, your courage, your authenticity, for not being a victim, because you have every reason to, think that you are, I mean, with the stuff that's been thrown at you, that wasn't your fault at all. And for the real force of good that you are. So I really honor you and respect and admire and appreciate and find you an inspiration. And honor you for going to visit the killers of your dad. I mean, that's just phenomenal courage. We haven't talked about the whole issue of forgiveness, but, forgiveness is letting go. And you've admirably done that, where many people hang on to bitterness and anger, and they feel I have an excuse to take drugs, and you've banished all that. And then,
well, not all the way. Like I hate the word, not hate the word, but I don't love forgiveness.
It's a funny word. Yeah,
it's meant to be so black and white.
Yeah.
It's what I love what you just said, and I think that's what people, because forgiveness, like you forget about everything. That's not what it means. I love what you said about what forgiveness means, about letting go.
Yeah, it's taking back your power.
Taken back.
It's not allowing that person to dominate your life anymore, or to have rent-free.
And it's for you, right?
Yeah, it's for you.
It's for you. It's not for the other person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you can't change the other person.
No.
They may never repent. They may never feel sorry. And that cannot change you, because if it does, you're a victim of them.
Yeah.
You're giving them power. Yeah. So you've taken your power. And of course, Lindiwe, it's a journey. I mean, I'm still on the journey. Sure. We all are, we're growing, we're healing, we're discovering things that we still need to. It's fun and it's satisfying. It's victorious.
Thank you.
It's victorious. Yeah.
Thank you. And the thing is, I actually think that's what I'm addicted to. I'm literally addicted to that high of like this. Every time I discover something interesting or do something like I never used to want to do, like sitting here on a podcast talking to you. One of the things I don't really like doing, but I've just made a very conscious decision to step out.
Fantastic.
All the time. Doesn't matter what it is, just step out. And that fear, push through that.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it becomes a triumph, So I just, in conclusion, I mean, there's so many beautiful messages from this wonderful human being called Lindiwe Hani. Lean into the pain. Don't run away from it. You can't escape it. Go into it, but don't let it define you. Overcome it, step by step by step. Have the courage, the balls, not to be a victim, but to take back your power and go through, because there's so much beauty you can bring to the world, and you're designed to bring to the world, to be a force for good. So, Lindiwe, thank you.
Thank you.